In 10.1, we talked about the surface area of two different kinds of prisms. Today, I want to talk to you about the surface areas of cylinders. If we were all in class together, I would have brought in a can of Pringles today to show you that a can of Pringles is a kind of cylinder. So if you think about it, think about a kind of Pringle can that you've seen before. What shape is at the top and at the bottom of a Pringle can? It's a circle, okay? So just like if we're finding the area of a circle is pi r squared. Now you got to think about it. Once again, if I have this at the top and this at the bottom, those are called my bases. So the top and the bottom are your bases. As you can see here, I have two bases. So we are simply taking 2 times pi r squared. So you can see the pi r squared there is the formula for the area of a circle. And we're doing 2 because there's a top and a bottom, so there are 2 circles there. So the surface area formula for a cylinder is SA, which stands for surface area, equals 2 pi r squared, because once again that's focusing on the top of a cylinder and the bottom of a cylinder. And then it has this extra little part right here. It says plus 2 pi rh. That right there is something called the lateral surface area. And we kind of talked a little bit about the lateral surface area the other day in 10.1. Remember, that's just kind of like the space or the distance around the object. So the lateral surface area is going to be this whole space that is covering our Pringle can right there. So that's how you would find the lateral surface area for a cylinder. Then there's also down here, if you only wanted to know, not the surface area up here, but just the lateral surface area. That means, once again, just the shape around, but not including the top and the bottom. Then that would be a simple lateral surface area equals 2 pi rh. And if you notice, that is part of our formula right there. So when we're doing our problems, you just need to be careful and notice, is it asking for the surface area or is it asking for the lateral surface area? The surface area is always also going to include the top and the bottom, but the lateral surface area is just going to be the distance around the object. So notice our first instructions here. It asks us to find the surface area of the cylinder, and then we're going to round our answer to the nearest tenth. So remember, surface area, it means we are going to be including this top part up here, and we're including the whole space here, and then obviously our base also. Just like we did when we were working on the prisms, we're always going to start with our formula. So let's go ahead and start with the formula. Surface area equals, remember the area of a circle is pi r squared, but since I have two bases, the top and the bottom down here, I'm going to go ahead and put 2 times pi r squared. Plus, we want to go ahead and do the lateral surface area, which remember is this whole blue part right here. That's the distance around the circle. I want you to memorize this formula, 2 pi RH. Notice we're not squaring the r on that one, so that's just going to be something you want to go ahead and memorize. So now we're going to talk through plugging some things in. Surface area equals 2 times, and then remember pi, we're just going to use 3.14. As you're looking up here, remember this is focusing on the circle. So looking at our circle right here, you can easily see what the radius is. The radius is 4, so we're going to go ahead and plug that in, and then we have to square it. Plus 2 times pi, which we know is 3.14, times the radius, remember that's going to be our radius, and times the height. This is the height of our cylinder. So we're going to multiply that by 3. So really all we're doing is just plugging in a whole bunch of numbers here. Alright, so let's go ahead and focus on this first part right here. 2 times 3.14. We know that that is 6.28. And now we're going to focus on the next part over here, 4 squared. Remember, that does not mean 4 times 2. 4 times 4, because you have to multiply it by itself, is 16. Plus, let's go ahead and focus on this part right here. What is 2 times 3.14? We just did that. 6.28. Multiplied by, over here, you can see we've got 4 times 3, which is 12. Now let's go ahead and keep plugging in some numbers. If you plug in 6.28 times 16, you guys can go ahead and do that in your calculators. You will hopefully get 100.48. Plus, when we multiply these two together, we should be getting 75.36. Now all you need to do is just add those together. Surface area, when we add those together, we're going to get 175.84 millimeters. And we're going to go ahead and square the units because it's asking us to find the surface area. Now always go back to your instructions. I noticed on our past homework, a lot of it asked to be rounded to the nearest whole number or the nearest tenth, and a lot of people lost points on their quiz from before on that. So always check to see what it says. Round your answer to the nearest tenth. So remember, with the tenths place, you're just going to go ahead and look at that one, and then he's looking over here to see if it should bump up or if it should stay the same. You can clearly see that's below 5, so we're going to say the surface area is about 175.8 millimeters squared. Now, the next example is almost identical to that. Here's the main difference. This cylinder kind of looks like it fell over a little bit. So still, you've got to think, this is my base. Because remember, a base, there's going to always be two of them. So that could be considered the top, and this one could be considered the bottom. So always make sure you're looking, and then obviously all this stuff in here is going to be our lateral surface area. Just like always, we are going to go ahead and start with our formula. So we know the surface area equals, and remember, think of the bases. We have two bases, and it's a pi r squared because a cylinder is a circle for its base, plus, remember now we're going to do this whole space that's right in here. We're going to add that lateral surface area into it, which is 2 pi r h. I want you to stop the video, try it on your own, plug it in, and see how it works out. Alright, hopefully you took a minute to try to figure this out on your own. Let's kind of check your answer, okay? So we've got surface area equals 2 times 3.14. My radius, once again, we're looking for the radius of the top and the bottom, the bases. So this is going to be our radius up here. So we're going to multiply that times 3 squared plus, now remember we're doing this lateral surface area. That's 2 pi r h, so 2 times 3.14. Once again, the radius is still 3. And then our height, I know it doesn't look like this is a height, but I want you to picture this as a Pringle can that has fallen over. Okay, so the height is that part going up, which is the 18 centimeters. All right, so let's work through this, plugging in these numbers. 2 times 3.14, like we looked at before, is 6.28 times 3 squared, which is 3 times 3, so you should have gotten 9, plus, once again, 2 times 3.14, 6.28, and then if you multiply this 3 times 18, you should have gotten 54. Alright, so last multiplication here, 6.28 times 9 is 56.52 plus this 6.28 times 54, you're going to get 339.12. Now all we need to do is add together, so the surface area equals 395.64 centimeters squared. Once again, go back and double check the instructions where it says to round to the nearest tenth. This one asks that one, and you see you do not need to round up. It's just going to stay the same at 395.6 centimeters squared. So hopefully that makes sense. The main thing you're going to want to do here is go ahead, memorize those formulas for finding the surface area of a cylinder. Alright, so our instructions for number 2 are slightly different. As you can see, this says only to find the lateral surface area. So this is not going to include our bases, the top and the bottom. All this is going to do is just simply include this space like around the outside of the Pringle can or around the outside of the cylinder. Once again, we're still going to round our answers to the nearest tenth. So this is a totally different formula. If you look up at the top, you can see it's the simple, the basic, the little teeny tiny formula where it says lateral surface area. And normally, okay, so normally we were doing 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. Well, for this one, we no longer need to use this part at all because it's not asking for the top or the bottom. It's only wanting the lateral surface area, which is this part right here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just plug in just for that part. So we're going to have, one thing I want us to focus on, actually, I forgot about this. This is the distance all the way across the circle. So what did we call that part? It's not the radius. That's the diameter, okay? So if we know that the diameter equals 8 feet, that means the radius has to equal 4 feet, okay? So if I were you, every time I would go ahead and put that up there just to make sure that you've got the correct thing, because a lot of times people are just kind of putting the 8 in there thinking, oh, they gave me an 8, so I'm going to use an 8. So instead, we're going to use 2 times pi is 3.14. Now we can see our radius is not an 8, but it's a 4. And then still, the height of our cylinder is like going up and down on that Pringle can times 5. And now all you got to do is just multiply those things together. You can stick it all in your calculator at the same time. You can do it little bit by little bit. You can know this is going to be 6.28. 4 times 5 is going to be 20. It doesn't matter to me how you multiply that together. You can just stick it all straight in there. When you get it, your calculator tells you 125.6. And still, because it's asking for the lateral surface area, we want to make sure that we go ahead and square the units. And as you can see, when I go back up here and it says round to the nearest tenth, well, my answer is already in the tenths place. So that means my answer is complete and I'm finished. I want you guys to go ahead and go on to B. Do it yourself, okay? Remember, you're only finding the lateral surface area, not the entire surface area. All right, hopefully you've taken a minute, you've tried to figure this out all on your own. If you remember, we're going to start up here. That's the distance all the way across. So we know that that's our diameter is going to be 3 yards, which means cut 3 in half. You get 1.5 yards for your radius, okay? So that's important information. Remember to do each time. Once again, we're only finding the lateral surface area, so I'm just going to write 2 pi r h. Pretty simple. 2 times 3.14. Remember up here, our radius tells us it's 1.5. And then you can see the height of that cylinder thing that looks like a Pringle can times 8. Put all that in your calculator, and hopefully you found 75.36 yards squared to be your answer. But remember, our instructions ask us to round to the nearest tenth. This one asks the hundredths place if it's 5 or bigger. And the 6 definitely says yes, so we are going to bump that up to 75.4 yards squared. All right, so that pretty much concludes our lesson today about surface area of cylinders. Tonight's homework, you're going to be going to the Big Ideas portal and looking for 10.2. There's only 6 problems here. Just be careful because there's only 16 problems. If you skip one, it's minus 16 points. So I've seen a few people just skip questions completely. Please don't do that. At least try. And remember, you can use the check feature that can help you to check to see if your answer is correct or not. And then use the help feature also on that Big Ideas portal to help you know and understand how to do the problem better so that you will do great on quizzes and tests that come up. Good job today, guys. Bye.